I was actually worried that my outfit was too loud, and then Sav just, set the stage, so to speak. Really, really, really excited to be here with you all. My name is Leen, and today I'm going to hopefully be sharing a few stories, a few tips, a few experiments to inspire and maybe you walk away with something new, who knows. But before I start, I wanted to get one very important thing out of the way, which is how to pronounce my name, Leen. So usually, if the crowd is like a really cool, hip crowd, I'll say my name is Leen, like lean back. Yeah? Okay. Or if the crowd is like a really tech-savvy crowd, I'll say lean, like lean startup. And judging by today, I feel like this is a crowd that has a little bit of mix of both of those things. So I went ahead and included both, and you can take your pick. And that way you won't forget my name when you leave the room today. So now that that's out of the way, so I'm Leen. I'm the director of community at a wonderful organization called ATÖLYE, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But like many of you here, I identify as a total community nerd. Anyone else? Show of hands. Can't really see. Okay, lots. Yeah, I mean, that's what I thought would happen. And before I identified as a total community nerd, I identified as sort of like a hostess with the mostest. So for years, I hosted weekly dinner parties where I would invite strangers, friends, really anyone I met. And this is a trick I met from a good friend of mine, Fabian, who I met at a rando dinner party at his house in New York a long time ago. But basically, I would host these weekly dinner parties and just bring people together over a nice home-cooked meal. And it's basically how I made most of my adult friendships today. But when I think about it, or I go even further back, I've been kind of in this community world without knowing it for a while. I grew up in Beirut, Lebanon. Thank you, whoever that was. And in my senior year of high school in 2005, I accidentally started a teeny tiny movement, non-political or political, I'm not really sure to this day what you would count it as part of the 2005 protests at the time. And the whole thing started because of these rubber bracelets, kind of like the Live Strong bracelets. I don't know if you remember those. And they said United for Lebanon on them. And my cousin and I thought it would be great to order like 100,000 of these and distribute them. And it caused a little bit of controversy, but that's a story for another time, so I'm not going to get into it. You can find me afterwards. But in a way, this was about bringing people together around a shared cause, and it was all about a bracelet, so very weird stuff. And in 2012, as part of my graduate thesis at the School of Visual Arts in New York City, I tried to start a different kind of revolution. And this was a platform, a secret platform, an online community called Beynetna, which encouraged college-age girls in Lebanon to share questions and stories around their sexuality and health in an anonymous way. And obviously this was back when Facebook was the only community platform that existed. And by the end of this little experiment, we had about 400 members in the Facebook group, 1,000 questions on the anonymous platform. And although Beynetna didn't kind of continue on, I do currently sit as an advisor to Moj, which is the first Arab sexual wellness platform. And so in a way, Beynetna also kind of lived on. And a few years after Beynetna, my good friend Mikey came up to me one day and asked if I'd be down to host a gathering on my rooftop in Brooklyn. And the idea there was he wanted to bring a bunch of friends together and just nerd out about basically anything to do with Arab history and culture, forgotten stories, that sort of thing. And Fikra, 9 years later, is now a global community with 30 chapters around the world, about 100,000 members. It's also a media platform and an academy. Mikey and the team have done such an amazing job, but it's kind of crazy to think that just one little gathering can start something like that. And even with all these experiences, I never really thought about building a career in community until about 2019. By then, I had been living in Dubai for a few years. I was working on a startup that I had launched called This Toothbrush, which is like another story for another day. But I was ready to do something that kind of brought me back to my roots, brought me back to my passions. And I was working on this project called Home, or Her Own Middle East, which was a global community for women to come together and share stories. It took many different forms. At some point, I wanted to launch a co-working space, then it was a conference, kept changing. And right before I could really take the leap and start something new, ATÖLYE came into the picture. So I joined ATÖLYE as a community lead exactly 4 years ago, actually this week. And it was my first role with the word community in it. And I remember thinking, like, really? Someone's gonna pay me to do this? That's crazy. It was really not, and still is, especially in the Middle East, something that is considered a career. So I was really excited about it, and I felt like my passion for bringing people together, building new exciting things, and creating meaningful experiences was culminating in this one moment. I think Kyle was speaking about this earlier, about finding your different areas of expertise and seeing what they all bring together. And this was really it for me. So it really combined my design background, my entrepreneurial background, and my, what I now call, community background in one. And to introduce you all to ATÖLYE a little bit, simply put, we are a strategic design and innovation consultancy. We have hubs in Istanbul, Dubai, soon Amsterdam. And our work focuses primarily on large-scale projects with private and public sector clients across a variety of design disciplines and fields. So everything from spatial design and architecture, to digital design, to learning design, to service design. So I know a lot of people here are probably from the tech space or the platform space. So I hope that this will give a little bit of a different angle, since that's primarily our business, is actually a design and innovation consultancy. We're also a B Corp, so that basically, yay, B Corp. Basically means we are serious about doing good in the world, and we're committed to it, and someone has to hold us accountable to it. We are globally connected, so we are part of the Q Collective. The Q Collective is a family of 20 of the what I think are the most inspiring creative industry organizations in the world, including IDEO, SY Partners, Gale, and a whole bunch of others. And we're really excited to be part of this collective as of a few years ago. But what really, really makes us unique, and what really drew me to ATÖLYE in the first place, is our community-powered model. So we say we're powered by community. So at the heart of this community sits 60 full-time team members, and that's our core team. And around that sits 250 members of our community of practice. And I love that I can say community of practice and people actually know what that means here. And these members really power our consultancy, and I'll share a little bit more about that in a minute. And we keep this community purposely small, so you'll see throughout today's presentation, unlike some of the other communities that maybe present here or that you might be working in, these are more like micro communities compared to the thousands and tens of thousands of users and community members that we may be exploring for the rest of the 2 days. And beyond that are our 5,000 or so network partners, alumni that make up our outer circle. And community has been really an essential part of our story since we launched in Istanbul 10 years ago. Our members consist of designers, strategists, subject matter experts, thought leaders, and these individuals are literally the talent, marketing, and business development engine of ATÖLYE. And being community-powered for us means we provide awesome freelance opportunities for our members to collaborate with us. So we pull them into our projects, we match them based on skill and expertise, and they get to work on really large-scale projects that they wouldn't normally have access to, and we get to work with amazing talent. So every one of our projects has about 1 or 2 community members alongside our team. Our community also brings our workspaces to life, whether in Istanbul or in our space in Dubai, where we're located as part of the Dubai Future Foundation. And in addition to collaborating with us on projects, our members also co-create a lot of our content with us. So a lot of thought leadership, events, articles, whatever it is. So for them, it becomes a platform for them to test content, to gain exposure. And for us, it becomes an avenue for us to explore new horizons, new topics, and push kind of our go-to-market strategy and our portfolio strategy through. And so our community is kind of like an extension of our team. And because it's small, we get to create these one-on-one relationships with them, and we get to really get to know them and kind of co-create things together. And we have a lot of fun. So today's talk is about play. I feel like we started the day playing, so we really encourage that in our community. It's a big value for us. And while we consider ourselves to be community-powered, we also power communities. So our work is really around the business of community-powered transformation. And what we mean by that is building and powering communities for our clients and partners in order to enable exponential impact. And we believe that this is the only way forward towards a regenerative future. And the way we enable this transformation is through a few different ways. One is through platforms that bring communities together around a shared purpose. So this is earlier this year, we brought together a local community around the earthquake crisis in Turkey and Syria. We opened up our doors and our spaces and allowed for 12 working groups to come up with disaster response and preparedness projects. We also do it through physical spaces that enable action and collaboration. So we're very much believers in the physical space. And through brand activations that enable co-creation and inclusivity. We do it through hubs that revive forgotten places of culture and history. So kind of think of them as communities of place. And this is an example with Qatar Museums, where we revived an old heritage district into a culture and production hub. And finally, we do it through learning programs that equip our leaders with the skills and the know-how needed to flourish in community. So this is an example of a project we did with BMW Foundation, where we launched a learning program for their Responsible Leaders program. So all of these examples really are just showing where the world is headed. I think someone was asking the question, like, is the future community? And we really, really, really do believe so. And I personally believe that community-powered or community-led or community-driven business is really the future of innovation. And we're starting to see it in our own work, and we're hoping that others can start to see it too. So how do we go from all of that to gamifying community? So I personally have been thinking about this a lot. When we think about community power, we think about reciprocal value. So you can't really have a powerful community or a community that powers anything without having that reciprocity in the community, where there's an even exchange, there's a give and take relationship. And I think our model is pretty unique in this way. And so I wanted to share today a few things around our little experiment around gamifying community that is sort of different than things that you might find in large-scale digital communities. So, like every good story, it starts with a very bright-eyed community team and an unwanted visitor, and the gifts are back, so it's time for play again. So COVID, obviously, if you were wondering. So remember all those faces of all the happy members and the intimate circles of trust and all of that? COVID killed all of that, like many other communities. And this is an image actually from the last event we hosted. It was March 2020, and I remember we started hearing some news, and we distributed hand sanitizer that said, exchange emails, not germs, and we thought it was really funny. And now I look back and I'm like, you have no idea. Like, you had no clue what was coming. So like most communities in the world, ours started to look like this. Lots of Zoom calls, lots of like fake excitement about the fact that we're all home, taking screenshots of our screens. But because we've always been a physical community first, so you remember those pictures of the physical spaces, we also have like a strong architecture practice, so we're very much about spatial design, we're very much about bringing people together, just like in this room today. So because we've been a physical community first, we had very few digital touch points, and our member engagement completely plummeted. Here, maybe I can stop and ask, like, who in this crowd thinks that member engagement is their #1 challenge in building community? Quite a few. Okay, great. So we're not alone. And I don't have the answer, so don't think I'm going to give you the answer today. I'm just going to share our experience of it. So, you know, we looked around and we were like, well, where did our members go? There's no space, there aren't any spaces. And slowly we made some really significant shifts to our model. So we went from a local creative community with a space-dependent fee-based model, so it was kind of a traditional membership model, to a very curated community of practice where space enables that community, it doesn't depend on it, and it's completely free. So this might sound a little crazy because people are like, wait, you went from paid to free, like how are you even existing? But I think what's really interesting about this model is the business model was never about membership fees. Our community is really about creating value for the business, which is the consultancy. But changing our model to free was really the most drastic change we could have made, and of course Oprah is the best person to explain this point. But really the main reason was because we wanted to focus on bringing the right people in, and we wanted to remove the barrier of entry that we were seeing in order to bring the right people in and create value in a different way. So we started rethinking our currency, our value. And we started to think about it in terms of engagement, in terms of reciprocity, in terms of creating mutual value for members and for the organization. And so we changed the entire currency system to be engagement focused. But because members were no longer paying for services and access to stuff, it meant we needed a different incentivization mechanism. And that's where our little experiment started. So we decided to build something called blocks. And blocks, a lot of people here will be like, yeah, well, there's a tool for that, and you didn't need to go through all of this. But again, remember, we're a tiny community team within a very large organization, and it's a pretty small community as well that we're managing, and it's very hands-on, and there's a lot of physical elements to it. So blocks is basically a point system. It's based on a legacy system that we had designed years ago called Interaction Quotient, and we decided to bring that back to life. And the way it works is they're basically points that members collect whenever they engage in activities that add value to the community. And blocks accrue over time to unlock membership levels, perks, and badges. So why gamification? As humans, we thrive on achievement, on recognition, on motivation. Everything is gamified nowadays, from our meditation apps to our dating apps to our running apps. But it's also important to remember that gamification is just a method. It's not anything more than that. It's just a way of engaging and connecting with people, and a way of structuring older models that exist. So that's kind of how we approached it. And since the currency of our community was no longer monetary, we wanted to use gamification to define a new form of currency. And so I'm going to share 5 simple lessons, tips that we came to when we did this experiment. So first, we designed the whole incentivization system based on our core values. And for us, They were connection, growth, and impact. So for a community of practice, this will look different for everybody. For a community practice like ours, connection was about creating relationships. Growth was learning and knowledge sharing. Impact was collaboration and co-creation. And we believe with this simple equation, these are the building blocks of belonging for our community. So start with your values, see where that takes you, and that can become the foundation of this game mechanism. Second, identify and quantify the behaviors that you want to incentivize. The whole point of this is to see more actions and behaviors that you want to see more of. And so the second step here was to identify what those behaviors are and how valuable they are in our system. Again, this looks different to everybody. For us, we really wanted to put a high value on collaborating with us on projects because that's primarily why the community exists. And we identified about 30 trackable behaviors. So in addition to, introducing yourself on Slack, which is a really simple one, attending an event, hosting an event, collaborating on a project, we also had referrals, we had new lead generation, so if you introduce us to a client, and even using your free day pass was incentivized because we wanted people to actually come into the space, even though it was free. And the next thing we did was we looked at all of our member benefits. So these are usually, your paid membership packages, like a co-working space package, like a resident or a flex. And we looked at what we already had, and we unbundled those and then rebundled them into locked levels. So we kind of learned and got inspired by game mechanisms and gamification to turn our membership packages into basically different levels that you can unblock with different types of blocks and different numbers of blocks. And each of these actually unlocks tiered access to our space. So with Base, you have 1 free day pass. With Pillar, you have 10, and so on and so forth. But also, we did it with our learning programs, with our perks, our partnerships, our content, really everything that we had to offer. We tried to figure out a value and then lock them in these levels. In addition to using blocks to unlock levels, we wanted to incentivize certain repeat behaviors. So we created badges, which is a very common game mechanism, but we applied it to our world. So in our case, we created about 10 different ones. If you post it on Slack 500 times, you earn the Slack Master badge. And each of these are rewarded with one-off rewards. Similar with the Star Collaborator, with the Curious Cat. And what this also did was enable us to identify our most engaged members and really figure out how to create more value with them. And finally, I know, a lot of the tools that we use in this space and some of the tools that are actually outside in the tent, we love. So Orbit, Common Room, there's so many tools out there that really can help you do this, especially if you're building a large-scale digital community. But again, we wanted to be really scrappy with this. We wanted to just test it out. We wanted it to be no code. We wanted it to be something that our tiny team could do. And so we wanted to integrate it into stuff that we were already doing. And we decided to build our own version with our favorite tools that we were already using, Airtable and Notion, surprise, surprise. And so with the help of a couple of community members, we built some really great integrations, very simple solution that became kind of our back end of blocks. So you'll see here, all the member activities are logged, tracked, and updated on Airtable. We even integrated it into platforms that we use that I don't think a lot of other communities use, including our project databases, our Productive, Nexodus, which is our space app. So really just customizing what you need based on why you're building this mechanism. And with Airtable, we also were able to create some really great dashboards, which our point was not to have the best dashboard in the world. Our point was we just needed the data so that we could keep iterating on this system. So the dashboard really allowed us to identify whether we were meeting our targets, but also helped us kind of be smart about how we ask members to commit to this community. So, for example, we created a system where, or a rule where members had to collect at least 5 blocks per quarter in order to stay in the community, so it was free. And to communicate all of this, we used our member handbook on Notion, we sent out automated emails, and we were able to really build something in a short amount of time that we could test out with our community. So we launched this beta version a few months ago, this holistic system that really didn't take like any fancy tools, any expertise, and we've just been running with it as an experiment. And since June, we've seen a 35% increase in engagement. But more importantly, some really beautiful stories have emerged that we didn't have access to in the past. So for example, Hiba, who had the highest connection points in the system, ended up getting hired full-time and joining the team. Or Asli, who had the highest growth points, is now leading our events in Istanbul. Or Ali, who has the highest impact points and is our go-to collaborator on projects now. And we've been learning a lot and iterating along the way, and that's the best part about experimenting and playing and having fun with it. And the gamification experiment is really the first of many experiments that we've been doing, and it kind of led to the launch of the Community Lab. So we've been putting all of our learnings of the last 10 years of building really physical and phygital communities, I would say, into the Community Lab, and also making a case for community-powered transformation in business and in regenerative futures. And as part of Community Lab, we've been creating some frameworks. So there's an article around the gamifying community. We also have the community playbook, which has the 5 pillars of building creative communities of practice. It also comes with a toolkit, and we've been playing around with this community-powered organization model. So looking at the community-led growth model and seeing how can that apply to the consultancy world where people aren't really thinking about community just yet. And most recently, we've designed, speaking of games and play, we've designed this game called Community Conspiracy, and it's a social deduction game based on, well, inspired by Werewolf or Mafia or any social deduction games that you may have played. And the whole idea of this is it's a deck of cards that has different personas that exist in a community. And when you play it, you really start to understand member dynamics through this game. And although I wish we could have played that game today, I do want to invite all of you to download it, but then also, as part of the giveaway in CMX fashion, to enter the giveaway, you get a gift, and then you get another gift. That's the vibe I'm getting at CMX. But yeah, I wanted to really share that with you all, and if you want to scan this QR code, you'll see you'll download a digital version of Community Conspiracy, but the first 3 people to download it will get a physical copy that I have with me today. So you'll get a physical deck of cards, and even if you don't, you'll have the digital version. And this also has all of my information, and if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn or wherever else, please feel free to do that. And thank you very much for listening. And I will, one clarification, I will reach out to you by email if you're one of the first 3 people, and I will find you and we'll get to have a nice chat, and I'll give you your gift. That's all.